Chris Roberts here for Fight Up TV, enjoyed by Eddie Hearn. How's things?
Good, mate, good. Apart from getting slung out of the building with a fire
alarm. What's going on here? Is this so you can get a quick escape from all the media? Or
this is people
is this
queuing up for tickets for Lewis Ritson.
This is a strategy, isn't it?
So, no, looking forward to Saturday. It's going to be a great show, massive crowd, and going to be a brilliant atmosphere.
And just in terms of, can you give us a brief summary of what to expect, on the event? It's live on Dazn.
Yeah, live on Sky Sports, live on Dazn in America. Just huge amount of fights. Obviously you've got Anthony Fowler, you've got John Doherty making his debut, you've got Joseph Laws, sold over 1,000 tickets. Got a really good cruiserweight fight, British title eliminator, between Simon Vallily and Craig Glover. Then you've got Dave Allen in a heavyweight fight against Amir Nebo, always entertaining. Really, really good fight for the British and Commonwealth title, playing a needle in there between Glenn Foot and Robbie Davis Jr. Joshua Boazzi defending his WBA title, and then the European title, Lewis Ritson challenging Patera, which I expect to be a really good fight.
And obviously, Fight Up TV, predominantly US audience in terms of on YouTube and everything else, live on Dazn.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really British event, this, in terms of, the atmosphere, the title fights that are on the line. What can they expect in America, and why should they be tuning into this?
They will tune in and go, wow, the UK is crazy, and that's what we've continued to show. From a fight fan's perspective, the US fans for Saturday night can expect a lot of entertainment, a lot of really good fights, and some of the best fighters coming through in world boxing. Joshua Boazzi, I believe, will be a world champion, and also Lewis Ritson, now top 10 ranked in some governing bodies. He's a real threat to the 135-pound division. So we had a great show in Chicago last week, live on Dazn, and this weekend on Dazn alone, you've got Bellator, you've got the World Boxing Super Series event as well, and you've got our show from Newcastle. So loads of action coming this weekend again on Dazn.
What's the initial response in terms of the US and looking into the UK market? I know, like, the criticism of the US sometimes is that they kind of keep to their own and they're sort of a bit internal in that sense. But what's the sort of initial response of looking into the UK? I think
they've always looked at, the UK as just phenomenal scenes. I mean, when the US tune into an Anthony Joshua fight, they can't believe what they're seeing. And you'll see that again on Saturday night. So we've got to try and create that kind of atmosphere in the US as well where we can. We had a little bit of it on Chicago on Saturday with the Polish fans, with Adamek against Miller. And we've got to try and keep building personalities and atmospheres and hype so that the atmosphere at these shows are great.
I just want to talk about other events, obviously, concerning yourself. Billie Joe Saunders. Very, very disappointing that what's happened there. What's sort of your initial thoughts on that?
I'm gutted. I mean, it was a big fight for Dazn. It was a fight that we wanted, and it was a fight that I believe could have made Demetrius Andrade a star. So when he failed a VADA drugs test, I always felt that the commission might do this, and they probably did the right thing. Because what's the point in signing up for VADA drug testing if when you fail, everyone just says, oh, actually, don't worry about it. And the excuse that UKAD said it was okay is irrelevant. It wasn't UKAD testing, it was VADA testing. And for UKAD to say that in competition is only on the day of the fight is absolutely ridiculous. So you're telling me that you can take oxylofrene and ephedrine for your entire camp, making you cut weight, making you faster, making you stronger, making you more dangerous in the ring, and then just come off it 2 days before the fight? It's ridiculous. VADA is VADA. VADA's VADA. VADA is eternal testing in that it's in competition. Whenever you get tested, you are in competition. Because that's what you are as a fighter. It's about the work you put in camp to prepare you for the fight night. So I think they need to look at that. But ultimately, he failed a VADA test. And I saw Frank Warren say, oh, Eddie Hearn's happy because now he gets to save money. They don't want to save money. We want to put on that fight. And he'll probably get stripped then. And, Saunders will fight, and I believe Saunders will become world champion on October 20th.
I mean,
sorry, Andrade.
I was going to ask him in terms of where Saunders goes and what this kind of does for his career. No, that's not 100% your concern. It's much just an opinion as a boxing fan, really. Because the big shame with him is it's almost like he seems to start getting the momentum, and then he gets the rug pulled under, and it's very frustrating as a boxing fan. I want to see Billie Joe Saunders fighting in these sort of fights.
But I think a lot of this is, I don't think that Billie Joe Saunders knowingly took a banned substance in this fight. I believe him, but as an athlete, it's your responsibility. And his fights have fallen through in the past for his own fault, and sometimes it hasn't been his fault. But he ain't got a great track record, and we want to make this fight. We want the fight, Andrade Saunders, and maybe when Billie Joe Saunders Andrade becomes champion, we fight Saunders next because he wants it, and it's a big fight, and there's a lot of controversy. So I'm game for that, but you can't just turn a blind eye when someone fails a drugs test because the sport becomes a mockery.
And then just obviously in terms of another fight regarding yourself, you know, Kell Brook, Amir Khan. You know, a lot of talk in terms of how close is that fight from actually happening? I know there's a lot of talk
it's actually
around sort of
it's
the
probably
weight.
the first time now that both fighters are in the mode to make the fight. Like I feel like both fighters think that this fight's going to happen next, and that's the first time in probably 5 years we've ever had it like that. So I think the signs are good. Still a long way to go, but probably February or March time we may get Kell Brook out December the 8th, and we'll go from there.
And what about the weight issue? You know, those hydration clauses. And
that's
stuff
not
like
really
that.
been discussed. I mean, you know, I think that Amir probably learned his lesson from the Canelo fight regarding rehydration. 147 is not a problem for Kell Brook. The rehydration clause.
It's tough though, isn't it? It's a tough way for him to get.
It
is.
He's
not getting any younger.
It's certainly not an advantage.
Yeah.
Is it a disadvantage? Maybe. It depends how he makes the weight. But I think for a fight like this, you know, sometimes his discipline hasn't been the best. But I think for a fight like this, you're going to see Kell Brook disciplined to make 147. But you know, I also understand Amir. Why should Amir fight outside of his comfort zone for a fight? You know, he's saying, look, I'll fight you, but I'm a welterweight. So you have to come to 147, which you've been at all your career, apart from your last fight, and we'll make it happen.
I think the impression though it kind of gives to the fans and what kind of the fans are saying, the sort of feedback initially on Twitter is, you know, it probably shows, or maybe is suggesting only one person wants to fight or really wants to fight. People suggest that Amir Khan doesn't truly really want this. If he's sort of putting in clauses, putting in hurdles, so that they agreed to come down and fight him at 147. What sort of your opinion on that?
I think he does want the fight. I think that he wanted the Pacquiao fight as well, but I think also, like any team, you know, you're always going to try and get the advantage in negotiations. And it's not the first time, you know, but that's what he's saying. He's on 147. If you want to fight at 147, you know, we'll talk about the rehydration clause, but certainly there's still a long way to go. But like I said, first time that people actually, you know, I think are genuinely trying to make the fight.
Yeah, and obviously another big fight, you know, happening. Obviously, you know, the Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. What have you made of sort of the press conferences, the build up, the
you know,
media?
I think Fury does a great job. I mean, look, the two are, I won't say they're friends, but they're very pally. And you'd have it think that they couldn't stand each other, and that's what Tyson Fury does. He's very good at that. So, you know, I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I think Fury will do what he always does, which is hold, spoil and frustrate. And I fancy, because Fury's not ready for the fight, that actually, you know, he ends up, Wilder ends up with a stoppage victory.
Okay. And just to finish off, there's a couple of comments obviously in terms of the pay-per-view events, 22nd December between Carlframpton and Warrington, and you're potentially running a pay-per-view event yourself. What sort of the progression on that? Is that still?
We'll definitely go on December 22nd. So we will. Dillian White is going to fight Chisora or Brazil or Ortiz. So that will be our pay-per-view event. You know, we've had it penciled for a long time. It's the only date available at the O2 Arena. So, you know, you've got another, I think the Gauss Eubank could go December 8. You've got Fury Wilder December 1.
It's unbelievable.
You know, you've got Canelo against Fielding December 15. That's not pay-per-view in the UK, but you know, it's you got to take your choices. You know, if you don't want to spend the money, you've got to choose the ones you want to spend the money on. And you know, it means that there's a lot of big fights, but you know, unfortunately in December, a lot of options for fight fans spend their money on.
And ideally, assume you wouldn't prefer that scenario.
No, we'd rather go on December 15th. But the O2's not available, and no disrespect to Frampton Warrington, it's not a fight that is going to affect our pay-per-view numbers. So if it was Fury Wilder, we just couldn't go on the 22nd, you know. But it's not, so we've got to do our thing.
Okay, well listen, Eddie Hearn, thanks for talking.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot. Cheers, mate.